What is up, y'all? How are you guys doing? Welcome back to my channel for another video. So how's everyone doing? I don't know why I asked that and then kind of expected a response, but just say it out loud right now. Just say what's good, because apparently that's what I wanted. But yeah, so I just got back from Florida, so if you guys can't tell, like, I did get a bit of color. You probably can't tell though because I am super pale, and yeah, just gonna have to keep living with that. But I just, you know, was out for the past week, so I've had a nice long weekend to kind of decompress, so I feel a lot better. And that is why I have a video that is literally so long. I spent the past 3 hours researching for it. It is definitely the longest video I've ever done. And it's definitely the most detailed case I've ever done, or at least the most details, because I was just writing and writing. My fingers really hurt. So today I have a case that is kind of a big one, and probably the most high-profile one I've ever covered. But what I kind of wanted to do for this video is really go back to my roots. If you guys remember all that time ago when I posted my first video, which is actually almost a year ago now, which is really weird. That is really weird, actually. It's very bizarre. But I posted it, and it was kind of about the Megan is Missing video, and it was supposed to be like the real case behind it. Because I've always kind of been curious about cases and if, like, you know, films or even book adaptations have been made of these things, and I thought it was really interesting that the Megan is Missing one did have a real case. And so I thought, well, is there any other cases, or like, is there any other movies that have real life cases behind them? And another movie I actually recently watched within the past year is called The Strangers. And if you guys have heard of that, it's probably because it was literally so scary. That trailer, I watched it and I literally freaked out when I saw it for the first time, because I was like, oh my god, that home invasion stuff is very terrifying, and that movie does like a great job at just like encapsulating it, and it's very dark and low quality and it's just, she hits. But the movie itself was one of like the scarier ones for me, so I was like, I wonder if there's a case behind it, and it turns out there is. And this case, I mean, everyone knows this case, I just didn't know that it might have inspired the movie The Strangers. So this brings me to today's video, which is going to be on the infamous case of Sharon Tate, done by the Charles Manson family, which inspired the movie The Strangers. So I kind of wanted to start at first by kind of explaining the movie The Strangers was and what it's about. If you guys haven't seen it, I will be obviously spoiling, although it's not like you know what happens. It's a very cut and dry like horror movie, but like the way that it is done is very scary, so I would recommend still watching it. But this like isn't gonna be like crazy spoilers, like you kind of already know what's going on. But I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about like what goes on in the movie, so you can see like the kind of real life comparisons between this and the actual murder. So a quick synopsis of this film is essentially a couple is on a weekend getaway, and they are in this like isolated cabin in the woods basically, and they are alone and there's no one around them, and they're just kind of going away for a little like retreat. And while they're there, some weird things start happening around the house, and they kind of notice like something just feels awry. And the viewers find out something way sooner than the actual couple in the movie does, and that is that people have broken into their home and are kind of stalking them, and we can see them in the back of camera angles and stuff. I'll try to put some clips in so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But it is very freaky to watch. And essentially that is like the synopsis of the movie, is that these strangers break in, and eventually they kind of start terrorizing and chasing the couple throughout the house until inevitably the couple is finally like kind of captured by the group of strangers that come in, and there's 3 of them, and then they are put and tied up in the living room and they are killed. Except the wife actually doesn't die, she like pops up alive again at the end, which is weird, but they were like stabbed and attempted murder at least on the wife, but on the woman, but the man was actually killed. So obviously after watching this movie, I was a bit underwhelmed, I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of annoying that the trailer kind of had all like the jump scare moments, so I kind of knew what was coming before it happened. I feel like had I watched the movie the first time without any of the trailer information, it would have been a lot better, but it was definitely still interesting to watch, and I would definitely recommend it. But the thing that made this video, or this movie, really terrifying, at least for me, because this part was also in the trailer, is at the beginning of the film they play a title slide, and the title slide says, "Based on true events." And I was like, how have I never heard of this case? Like, this seems terrifying. And so I started doing some research about, well, what case did inspire this movie, or at least what have people kind of assumed is the inspiration, and that is the murder of Sharon Tate in 1969. Sharon Tate was a beautiful actress whose career was budding in Hollywood, and she was actually just had gotten married and was 8.5 months pregnant at the time of her death. her life was really starting to take shape, and although she was only 23, she knew exactly what she wanted in life, which was to have a family after her acting career. And she had actually done really well in her acting career and was now about to have a child. So it seemed like life for her was really good, and it was getting to a point where she was going to be happy to be able to live the life that she wanted. However, unfortunately, that would never come to fruition, as in 1969, her life would be tragically taken away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I would like to start off with how I know this case, actually, because this case is one of the cases that got me into true crime. In the Black Dahlia case, I kind of talked about how that was a big one for me, but Sharon Tate was like the case for me. I literally, when I first heard about like the Charles Manson family murders and I started reading about them, something struck out about like Sharon Tate's case. I've always had this interest in like Hollywood, and like I feel like there's a lot of darkness in old Hollywood, and I feel like this case kind of takes it there. And I've just found a lot of interest in like the glamour of her lifestyle, and like she was a budding, beautiful actress, and I was just reading about all these things that she had done and accomplished, with like the stark difference of like her brutal murder where she was 8.5 months pregnant. I always found it to be really, really interesting, and so I'm glad in a way that I'm able to have this platform to sit down and now actually force myself to research in detail this case. And it is very important that I share this information with you because her case is so important, and I am a little in fear that one day she may be forgotten because this case was so long ago, and Charles Manson did recently just pass away in 2018, so not that recent, but still relatively recent. And I'm kind of worried that her case, and her specifically, won't outlive Charles Manson as a name. So that's why I want to make this video, so people will know who she is and can remember her. So I'm super sorry for that long-winded introduction into the case, but I wanted you guys to understand why I'm making this video, and kind of where the inspiration has come from. So now let's begin with who was Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate was born on January 24th in 1943 in the big old town of Dallas, Texas. At just 6 months old, Sharon Tate actually competed in and won Miss Tiny Tot of Dallas, which is kind of crazy because I didn't even know like kids at 6 months would compete in these things. But apparently from the ripe old age of 6 months old, Sharon Tate knew that she was going to be a star, and apparently she wanted the world to know too because she was already on her way to winning titles. Throughout her childhood, she continued to compete in pageants and would actually win a couple more notable titles. However, I think for her, pageantry wasn't something she was really interested in, so as she got older, she kind of stopped doing this, and I think she geared more towards a career in front of the camera, such as acting or modeling. When she was of high school age, her father actually was in the military, and he was an active military member, and so the family was forced to move to Vicenza, Italy, and she went to a high school near there because that's where he was stationed. In Italy's capital city of Rome, Sharon had auditioned and received her first role in Barabbas, where she was an extra, and this was kind of her first acting credit, and I feel like it was probably really exciting, and even though she was just an extra, I am sure she was taken aback with excitement, as now she would kind of get to see the background of like, what is a real movie setting like, and what is it like to be in a film in any capacity. She moved to Hollywood the following year after graduating from high school and after being in this film. And she wanted to really pursue this dream of being an actress, and at the time when she moved, it would have been out the 60s, this is when like Hollywood was at its peak of glamour and excitement. It was just such an interesting world to be a part of, and I think that she was drawn in by that and what looked to be like this glamorous side. And I feel like back then especially, like there was only a few like well-known actors and actresses, and I think when you got to that level of glamour and a beautiful lifestyle, people just want to be like that. And I think that's what she saw, and she wanted that too. So when she moved to Hollywood, I think her definitely appearance helped her a lot because she was a very stunning girl. I think personally that's why I was like gravitated towards her as well, because she was just such a striking person, and I was like, I want to know more about her. Like, there was just something really interesting about this like 60s mod look that she had going on. So she continued to act, and she got quite a few more roles actually. If you go to her Wikipedia page, there's a lot of credits that she had, so she was in quite a few movies, TV shows, films, anything of the sort. And she was really trying to get her name out there, and it kind of, her career started in like the early 1960s, is when she graduated and she moved to Hollywood, and she just kind of kept getting more and more roles. One role, and I do believe this probably would have been her breakout role had she got it, was for Billy Joe on the show Petticoat Junction, which is a sitcom at the time in Hollywood, and it was running from like the early 60s to the like late mid-60s. This role, Billy Joe, would have been one of the leads on this show. However, after the production team or whoever does like casting found out about her past in Playboy, they were not too pleased and they didn't want to hire someone like that for like a family sitcom type of show. So she was actually kicked, and that really would have been, I think, her breakout role, because I was looking at the cast list of it, and she would have been like one of the leads of this show had she gotten it. And they said that she was a heavy contender for it, but the Playboy thing was just too much for them, and so they ended up going with another actress. So during her auditioning for many more roles and trying to land bigger acting jobs, a director friend of hers had actually introduced her to one of the more well-known Hollywood directors at the time, Roman Polanski. Roman, I think, was completely taken aback by Sharon's classic beauty. She was blonde, she was skinny, she had beautiful eyelashes, and she had this very natural look that I think a lot of people found really appealing. She was like classically a beautiful girl. And I think Roman saw that, and I think being someone who enjoys art himself and creating films, he's gravitated towards her natural beauty and just attraction. And so he asked her out on a date, and of course she said yes, because she wanted to get the roles. I mean, I don't know if there's like, you know, she liked him too, or she just wanted the roles, but at first, you know, who knows what it was, but they ended up going on a couple dates, and I actually read some very odd things about these dates. They weren't like typical dates. On the first one, allegedly, I'm not really sure, I read this in one source, and I couldn't find it anywhere else, but I also think it was like, not like newsworthy, I think, like to some people, so that's kind of maybe why it wasn't in a couple, but I did find out that on their first date, allegedly, he didn't really talk to her a lot, and instead, like, it was kind of just a very awkward first date, but I guess he liked her enough that he asked her on a second date, and on the second date, he wore a Frankenstein mask. He had, like, charged at her in this Frankenstein mask, I think to, like, scare her, and I think he thought it was, like, some big joke. But I think she was actually a little scared, but, I think she might have found him kind of charming, because after the first couple dates, which I read were, like, pretty awkward, and obviously those are some examples, they ended up dating and going out pretty strong, actually, after this. Either way, she was eventually cast in the Polanski-directed film, Fearless Vampire Hunters, which was like a very campy sort of parody movie to, like, I think classically horror movies. She was cast a lead in this film, and he was actually the director and the lead of the film as well, so they played like each other's lovers in the film, so obviously I think that might have helped with like their relationship. And in real life, I think that's like what contributed to them like getting together as well. Very Twilight, but of the 1960s, if you will. So after filming, their relationship became very real in public, and with this, many people started to kind of speculate and comment on their relationship, and a lot more information and rumors were found out about the pair. So the first kind of issue that people had was Roman was actually 9 years her senior. He was 9 years older than her. And at the time of this film, I believe she was only 22, so that would have put him in his 30s, dating a very young woman in her 20s. And a lot of people were not really comfortable with this type of dynamic. There's obviously the potential for him to abuse his role as not only being older than her, but being a director, and she's just this young starlet actress. You hear about that all the time in Hollywood, of people taking advantage of young girls like that. But from what I've read, it seemed like she was really, really in love with him, especially at the time when their relationship was kind of first starting and like in their first couple of months and years of being together. However, people also heard some other kind of questionable things about their relationships. I have read this in a couple of sources, so I will put it in here, but obviously this is kind of like rumors and speculation. She allegedly did talk to people about this, but we can't really confirm it now, and this was almost 50 years. This was actually over 53 years ago now, so we can't really be sure what happened, but I've read some interesting things that I thought I would include. There were allegations of threesomes that Sharon might not have been comfortable with, meaning Roman would kind of bring these girls in and she would kind of feel obligated to partake in sexual relations with them and Roman. There also were allegations of infidelity during their marriage as well, which we'll get into a little later. So there was definitely a lot of problems throughout this relationship. However, I hate to say this, but I do feel like that is a kind of common thing that you see in Hollywood, with people kind of not being the most loyal in relationships, and I think it is because of like their star status. From what I read though, it was more so Roman as opposed to her. Like, she was pretty loyal, but he wasn't. And so I think he just got like a little power trip, and he wasn't the best to them in the relationship. However, she did really, really love him. And so that's, I think, what kept this relationship going strong. And this was during the mid-60s, by the way. So getting somewhat stagnant, her career was still growing, but I think it had kind of almost plateaued for a bit. It was kind of like going at this trajectory. Like, she was definitely getting her name out there and getting booking projects, but not to the level that she really, really wanted. And so it wasn't until 1967 with the release of the movie Valley of the Dolls, which I've actually heard of. I don't know how I've heard of it, but I've heard of it. And actually stars Sharon Tate as one of the lead stars. And I read the synopsis of the film and it actually looks very interesting, so I think I will be watching it after this. But getting her into this like big blockbuster success film like Valley of the Dolls, it seems like that's what most people knew her for, and this is kind of what took off her career and made her, maybe not household name, but definitely a known celebrity in the like sphere of America. Immediately following this film, Roman and her actually decided to tie the knot despite all of their kind of issues in their relationship. I think there was really a lot of love between them, especially for Sharon to him, but she did love him, and so I think she wanted to marry him and be with him. So they did end up getting married on January 20th of 1968 in London. Following the marriage, the couple had decided to buy a home in California, and it was located in Los Angeles, and the address was 10,050 Celio Drive. And that's an important address. We'll get back to it later. About a year after their marriage, almost to the date, actually, to like the month of their marriage, Sharon actually fell pregnant with Polanski's son, and from what I've read, actually, he didn't seem to be too happy with this baby, and the idea of him being a father. It seemed like Polanski would rather have a nice, pretty wife at home, but not a child with her, and so when she fell pregnant, it actually turned out that he tried to have her abort the baby, but she was totally against that idea, and she said, no, I'm not going to do that, like, I want this child. He obviously accepted that, but I'm not really sure why he didn't want to be a father, but he would take a lot of business trips and he would leave for a lot of times during their pregnancy. And he would actually go on his like business trips and he would cheat on Sharon with other women, and he had an affair with one woman in particular. Sharon wanted to continue working throughout her pregnancy, and until I guess the baby was really showing she could. So she worked in 2 films, Ciao Frederico and The 13 Chairs, which are other films of hers that are well known. Around August of 1969, Sharon had been kind of living alone for a bit. Polanski had kind of been traveling around doing his director things, and he hadn't really been home, and the couple was definitely going through it. And Sharon was thinking about getting a divorce from him if he wasn't going to come home and be the father that she wanted. It seemed like at this time in her life, Sharon was okay accepting the fact that like she could move on from her acting career. She had gotten a couple good roles, she would be remembered, and she was okay kind of letting that be in the past and kind of moving into the future with her baby and seeing where that goes, or at least taking a little break to kind of raise her child. From what it sounds like, Sharon really was excited to kind of start the path of motherhood, and while she did want a family with Polanski, she knew what she was worth and she was ready to kind of break that off had that needed to happen. And so, around August 9th of 1969, Sharon had spoken to Roman and was like, if you don't come home soon, like, we're gonna get a divorce. And so Roman was actually gonna come home one of the next couple days, allegedly, to be with his pregnant wife. So on August 9th of 1969, Sharon had been hanging out with a couple of her friends, Abigail Folger, who's actually the heiress to the Coffee Folger Company. So it was really crazy when I saw that connection when I was first reading about this. Her boyfriend, and one of Sharon's friends, who actually was a partner back a while ago, but now is just like a close friend of hers, and he's also a celebrity hairdresser. So they were all hanging out on August 9th of 1969, and they all decided to go to bed at around 10 or 11 o'clock at their home on Celio Drive. So now I would like to take a pause and jump a little bit to a different location, also in California, but not at the LA home of Sharon Tate. Now we're going to jump to the Manson family complex. I don't know where they were, but wherever they were plotting to wreak havoc on this house. And Manson was plotting a vicious and brutal murder that would shock the nation. A few years earlier, a man had lived in the house on Celio Drive that now Tate and Polanski owned. And this man was a music producer. And Charles Manson, or a young Charles Manson, had attended one of his parties and was playing some music for him and was like, will you sign me? This music producer was like, absolutely not, I don't like your music. And Charles Manson could never let that go. Even years later, he still remembered this music producer and he wanted to get revenge on that man. And he somehow, I don't know if the party was at his house or he knew his address, but he had the man's address and he intended on getting revenge on him or whoever was in that home. And it ended up being the latter, because what Manson didn't know is that the music producer had actually sold his home a couple months to a year before to Sharon Tate, who was now living in there with her pregnant belly. So earlier that night, Manson had told, I don't know if he told the whole family, there's kind of like some conflicting reports, but I know at least Charles Watson, or Tex Watson, had known about the murder, and he was told the plan by Charles Manson. And Charles Manson said, I want you to kill every single person in that home, and I want you to do something witchy. Now, there's a lot of speculation and rumors about, like, what is the real reason. Some people thought that they were trying to make a copycat murder to one of Manson's friends in jail, so it would look like the man in jail didn't do the murder. There was also the rumors that, like, he was still holding a grudge from his music producer, but I'm not really sure, so it is kind of up to you guys what you think. So Manson had let the family know what the plan was going to be for that house and what tragic fate all of the people were going to suffer. So now I want to talk about, like, who's in the home right now. So back at the Tate's home, right now there was Sharon, who was 8.5 months pregnant, sleeping in her bed. And also there was Abigail Folger, the coffee heiress, her boyfriend, Wojciech Frojowski, a Polish writer, and Sharon's really good friend, Jay Sebrig, who is a celebrity hairstylist. And also, there was another boy there that wasn't actually supposed to be there, and he wasn't actually a part of the people in the house at all. It was just some boy who happened to be driving on that road because he was going to the property owner's house a little ways, like, I think they lived, like, near, it was on the same road, and that boy was just driving down that road to go to the property owner's house. And this is 18-year-old Stephen Parent. So unbeknownst to the house occupants, the Manson family had actually parked their car at the base of their driveway and was now getting out to start their attack. So first, Tex Watson had come out of the car, and he was kind of walking his way up to the property, and before he got there, he saw Stephen Parent driving down the road, and so he flagged Stephen down, and before he could say anything, he went to the driver's side door and shot him 4 times very quickly. And that was it. Stephen was killed immediately. The girls were, I don't know if they knew what was going on or if they were confused. I've read, like, conflicting reports. Some people say they were on drugs, so there's a lot of, like, confusion about what had happened, but I do know that the girls kind of just listened to whatever Tex Watson told them to do. If he said jump, they jumped, and if he said kill, they killed. So it was very, like, you do or you die with this group. So the remainder of the group, so the 3 girls plus Tex Watson, so the 4 people in total are Tex Watson, which is kind of like the leader of this group, but, like, under Charles Manson. And then there was Susan Atkins, who, Sadie Atkins, is the same person, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian. So the group had gone to check around the house to see if any of the doors were unlocked, and they were all locked. Except there was a screen that was open, and Tex had a knife, and so Tex cut the screen open enough so they can all get through, except Linda. He told her to stay outside and stand guard, and if she heard anything, she would have to let them know, and then they would leave. So Linda was actually not inside at all during the attack. She was just kind of standing guard outside, and she has described hearing horrible, blood-curdling screams throughout what was going on inside. So now let's jump to what was going on inside to see what was going on. So the first thing they did when they all entered the house was all of them scrambled to get as many of the occupants as they found. They didn't know who they were looking for. They didn't have a target. The target was everyone. So they were trying to find everyone in the house that they could in order to bring them all into the living room, and that's exactly what they did. They found the 4 people living in there, including Sharon, and they pulled them all into the living room. Jay had actually been shot by Tex before they were even thrown into the living room. And when they were all tossed in the living room, Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring, her friend, were tied together with a rope around both of their necks so they couldn't escape. And Abigail and her boyfriend were also tied down so they couldn't move. Throughout the entire assault, the occupants of the home were trying to plead for their life, saying, please let us go, we won't tell anyone, the police don't have to know, just please let us go. Tex Watson began this attack by stabbing Sebrig, who was already laying on the floor. However, during this struggle, as I'm sure there was a lot of chaos going on, there was 3 people attacking and 4 people that were just trying to fight for their lives. And during this attack, Abigail Folger and Frojowski, her boyfriend, had managed to escape at different doors in different directions. When Frojowski ran out, he was clearly very wounded already from all the stabbing that had gone on, but he was trying to get as far as he could. But unfortunately, he didn't make it that far into the yard when Tex ran out and attacked him again, killing him and leaving his body in the yard. Abigail ran out in the other direction, and Patricia, one of the other girls, had chased down Abigail and jumped on top of her, continuing to stab her. Abigail was screaming for her mother and just wanting it all to be over and just to be safe and for it to end, but obviously that wasn't going to happen. A quote that has actually stuck with me since I first researched this case like 8 years ago was a quote that Abigail had said, and Abigail said this to Patricia after she jumped on her, and she said, "You've already got me. I'm dead." And this is while she was being stabbed by the girl. And she was stabbed a total of 28 times. Sadie Atkins was now alone in the room, because remember, everyone has escaped, and I think at this point Jay Seberg had been dead because he was just stabbed and shot already by Tex. So now there's just Sharon Tate alone at the mercy of Sadie Atkins, and she was just praying and holding her 8.5-month belly, just hoping that she could get out of this alive, and if that she couldn't, she wanted the baby too. Sharon Tate was pleading with Sadie, "Please let me have my baby, please let me have my baby," and Atkins didn't care, and she threw Sharon onto the ground in an attempt to shut her off, to make her be quiet. But obviously Sharon wasn't going to be quiet because she knew that this was life or death right now, and she knew that her baby would probably not make it into the morning if she just stood down there and let them stab her, like she had seen them stab everyone else. So when Tex Watson returned to the home after killing Furowski outside, he told Sadie to finish off Sharon, and that's when Sadie just attacked on top of Sharon. Sharon begged and pleaded and said that they could keep her as a hostage, but please let her have the baby, and kill her when they're done, but please let the baby be born and just let it be safe. That was what Sharon kept screaming, and they didn't care. Sadie attacked her, and Watson also allegedly stabbed her a couple times, but then he denied saying it, but then he did. It's unknown, but what matters is Sadie was the one who really did this. And she didn't stop until Sharon wasn't moving. At the end of the murders, the group now had 5 bodies out in the open to their name, and they took some of the blood and they wrote "pig" on the wall. As I told you before, this was supposed to be like a cover-up for another murder, like they were trying to make it seem like it was a copycat murder, and so by doing the pig thing, they were trying to reference another murder that I think one of his friends had done. There was a similar manner of death, is what I read, so they were trying to make it seem like it was related, but obviously this was like a really different case. The following morning, the housekeeper had actually come by to the house for cleaning, as I'm sure she did this either every day or every other day, but she had been there that day, the next day. And she stumbled upon the crime scene, which I can't even imagine the horror of walking in and seeing like blood everywhere and just seeing the chaos that probably ensued only hours before she had showed up. Obviously, the first thing she did was contact LAPD, and so the LAPD was there very quickly, and they wanted to investigate this crime scene as quickly as they could. This was a very high-profile case. This isn't just like a normal person. This is a celebrity and a celebrity area. This is in Hollywood. Things like this just didn't really happen to people like her. So one of the first things that police noticed on the gate opening the gate surrounding the complex, I guess, was a bloody fingerprint. And they needed to get into the complex, so instead of, waiting for someone else to open it, they actually pressed down on the bloody fingerprint, completely ruining it, so they could not get a fingerprint now from that. And I think that specifically comes to show, the investigators in this case, if that doesn't set the tone for the very first thing they did was just destroy evidence, then I don't know how else to explain, what else happened. There were so many missteps that the police did, and a lot of forensics issues that the police made during this investigation that nearly almost costed them convicting the right people because there were so many missteps. Another huge issue that they made was when they were taking blood samples, the person who was taking them decided that they only needed them from a select select area of the house because he assumed since there was so much blood it would take, I think, a long time to do, was his thought process, that he was like, if we take a small sample, I'm sure all the blood is mixed in here. Are you serious? Blood could be anywhere, and if he had, well, he did end up doing that, but what I'm saying is he could have missed a whole other person or a whole other group of people or 3, 4, 5, 6 people that bled in one other area but not in that one area. For all he knows, that blood could have all been one person instead of several people. And now you missed out on so many DNA profiles that you could have got from that blood, and now you're just wasting it. So there was a lot of issues, and these weren't the only ones, these are just kind of the prominent ones, but there were so many more that made this case nearly unsolvable. So one of the first things that they thought is, because they didn't really know what to think, Charles Manson wasn't a known name back then. It wasn't oh my god, there's this family of cult people going around and killing people. That wasn't a thing. And so the first thing that they thought was that this would be a drug-related murder, as when they went through the house they found different drugs like weed, I think MDMA, and different things like that. And they assumed, well, maybe this was a drug-related murder, who knows? But obviously this was squashed out pretty quickly, as there was no, drug dealers in the air. There was no one to really pin this on, so they were well, that didn't happen, and it was kind of an unfounded claim. However, there was a murder that happened kind of close by that seemed a little related, and that was the LaBianca murders, which I didn't really read a lot about them, and I probably should have, but I was doing a lot of research on this case, and I want to focus on another case and like get them confused, but basically the LaBianca murders were another set of murders that actually occurred by the Manson family, and there's a lot of similarities between the two murders, and so the LaBianca, I think, detectives were a little more keen about these things, and they noticed that there were similarities. The Tate detectives didn't really want to work with the LaBianca, I think because there probably wasn't like, they were like, oh, we have a high celebrity status, like, we're not going to let you touch this case. And then the LaBianca people were like, no, we want to help, like, there's similarities. And so they kind of didn't end up working together, which didn't help and only prolonged, like, the connections that could have been made between the two cases. However, that wasn't really the reason that they were caught, at least the reason that I found. The reason that I found is while in jail for another murder, Sadie Atkins had been convicted of another murder, or at least on trial waiting for, you know, to go, like, for her trial for the murder. She told a cellmate that the Manson family, including herself, and that she herself had killed Sharon Tate. And so this is the piece of evidence that kind of set everything in motion, as now they had a group of people that they could look at, and now when they had all this information and this evidence, they could compare it to the people, and they were able to, you know, realize that this was the group, in fact, that had killed Sharon Tate and LaBianca. So on December 8th of 1969, the Manson family members were indicted for the murders at the Tate home. All of them, excluding, actually, Linda Kasabian, because Linda Kasabian didn't actually commit or partake in the murders, as she said. She said that she was the watch guard, actually, outside, and they waited for her. I remember, like, they said, like, they let her outside so she could just hear things going on, and she didn't actually participate in the murders. So they said, listen, you didn't actually kill anyone. What you did isn't good, but we need your evidence and your testimony to put everyone where they were and to explain the things that happened. And that's exactly what she did. And so she was given immunity, and she was actually never sent to jail for her part in the murder, which is just crazy to me that, like, you know, Sharon's life was cut at 23. The baby's life was cut at 8.5 months old. They never got to live their life together at all. And now she gets to go free and live her life. Doesn't really seem fair, but it was what they needed to do at the time to get the conviction, so obviously they knew what they were doing. Well, did they? But they did what they had to do to get the convictions that they needed. And so the trial officially began in June of 1970, and a lot of things have actually been said about, like, this trial, and this trial is, like, very well known across, like, true crime, and also probably even not true crime people, because, like, it was, like, televised, and it was, like, a really well-known trial, is that the people were behaving super weird. Charles Manson would do something, and then the girls would follow him. He carved like an X on his forehead, and then they would do the same. The girls were also seen giggling a lot in court as if this wasn't serious, and when they were all inevitably convicted, and also, Charles Manson decided that the X wasn't enough. He wanted to carve a swastika in his forehead, and that actually, or tattoo it. But the swastika was there until his death. Like, he had that the whole time, and that was, like, permanent. So that was part of his brand, was having that there. So when everyone was convicted on January 25th of 1971, all members of the Manson family, excluding Linda because she traded her testimony, were found guilty, including Charles Manson, who was guilty even though he was never actually in the murder because he had told them all to do it and he was instructing them on how to do it. They were all also to be sentenced to death for their parts in the crimes. And after getting this news, they were all just giggling and laughing. If you guys have seen clips, they're really odd. The girls were kind of, like, laughing as they would walk out. It was like these people would do things for attention and they just wanted to make a big joke out of everything. I think for me, though, the craziest thing was when you saw that people outside were supporting Charles Manson. There's actually a group of girls that had shaved their head and I think done the X's as well to show their support for him. Which is just, like, crazy. I mean, it just shows you how much charisma he really had in order to get people that he never met while he was in trial for a brutal murder of a pregnant lady, that he could get supporters, which is kind of just, like, a crazy thought to me. But they were, as I said, supposed to all be sentenced to death, but the death penalty was actually overturned in California, and so a lot of people were not to be allowed to put to death, and that includes all of the girls and Tex Watson and Charles Manson. So they were all now not put on the death penalty for their crimes. So they were all, so all of their death sentences were converted to just, like, life sentences. So they would still spend their time in jail, except Linda. So actually, I will kind of give you, like, updates on where they all are now. So Sadie Atkins actually ended up passing away in 2009. not sad. Charles Manson ended up spending the rest of his life in jail until he passed away in 2018. I remember actually I was in school. That was like a big deal. And I don't know why either, because 2018 I didn't really understand who like he was. I just knew he was like a bad person, but I literally didn't know why. I looked at pictures and I was like terrified of him. That's literally all I knew. And I think that's actually why I started to look into the cases, was at his death. Tex Watson actually and Patricia Krenwinkel are still in jail to this day. And I think she's actually the second longest or the longest woman to ever serve like in a women's correctional facility in California, which is crazy that like, I just think it's weird to think like these people know exactly what happened that night and they're still alive to this day, because this does seem like, I mean it was 50 years ago, it doesn't seem like it was, and they're still alive and they know what happened, which is just crazy. Linda Casabin is still free and she's kind of changed her life a lot. She has done interviews now, but she doesn't really do like much else. She wants to keep a private life because obviously like a lot of people don't like her. A lot of people did sympathize with her, but a lot of people also didn't like her because of what she did, because she still was a part of the murder. It's just she got immunity because of her testimony. So obviously following this murder, there was so much, an indescribable amount of news publications that were released about this. It's really not that often that a pregnant like movie star dies in Hollywood in her home due to a home invasion from a satanic cult. Like, that, like, doesn't happen, so this made headlines everywhere.
In a scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird religious rite, 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski. Miss Tate, who starred in Valley of the Dolls, was 8 months pregnant and was found in a bikini-type nightgown with a rope around her neck attached to the body of a man.
2 bodies inside, 2 bodies outside.
Like, crazy stuff was being said, and it was just a very salacious time, and a lot of people were very interested. A lot of Hollywood stars were actually terrified that they were going to be next, because when this first happened, no one knew it was from a cult. People thought, are they targeting like all these celebrities? Like, Ray Seaberg was a hot Hollywood like a hairstylist. Abigail Folger was like the Folger coffee, you know that. That's the heiress, the daughter, who would have inherited all that. And then there's Sharon Tate, who was a well-known actress at the time, and there was also Freyowski, who was the author. These people were all like very big, well-known people in Hollywood, and they were all just killed brutally. And no one knew why or how or anything. So it was very terrifying for these people, and no one knew who would be next or what would come of it. The death truly shocked the nation, which is why it was such a huge deal. And the murderers themselves also became super well known, and if not household names because of what they did and their murders, which I kind of hate to see, because people might not know who Sharon Tate was now, but they'll know Manson and his girls, which is just really upsetting to see, because she could have had such a fulfilling life had she not been, you know, killed. Like, had she not had her life taken from her so young. So it's really sad to think about that, like, he has more notoriety than her, but that's kind of the main reason I wanted to make this case well known, is because I don't like to cover super well known cases, and obviously Charles Manson's like, how much more well known could you get? But I feel like people aren't talking about her as much as they used to, and there was something about her that really attracted me to this case, and that's why I wanted to share it with you guys, because I want you guys to kind of be exposed to the same cases that I was, because there are something so impactful, I think, about her. And even to her last moments alive, she was fighting for her child, and she wasn't going to give up. And I feel like she's such a strong person, and I feel like we can't forget about her and what she did and who she was, and it's just really sad to think about. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for you. I really hope you learned something from this case, and I hope we can remember Sharon Tate was like the baddest bitch out there. Like, genuinely, I'm obsessed with her, and there's just so many things to like about her. And also, I don't want to like under-respect the people that she was also with. These were great people and close people to her. They were all friends. Abigail Folger was a really good philanthropist and good charity person. Freyowski was a very good writer, and Jay Seaberg was like a very, very, very well-known hairstylist, and he was like revolutionizing the hairstyling game for a lot of people, for men. And it's just really crazy that all of their lives were taken from them. So I want to memorialize them and remember them in this video. But that's all I got for you guys. Hope you learned something, and yeah. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you guys want to. My Instagram handle is my name. My Twitter handle is something really cringy, but I think they're super cute. Follow me there and like my pictures, because I get validation from strangers on the internet. Obviously, why else would I be a YouTuber? So I love you guys so much. Thank you for everything, seriously, and always. Love you. Bye!